Alright mates, how's it going? In today's video, it's chapter 3 of Tides of Darkness by Aaron Rosenberg. Just the one chapter today, unfortunately. So let's go! Khadgar watched quietly from the edge of the throne room. Lothar had asked him to be here, as a witness and stuff, and Khadgar's own curiosity had compelled him to accept the invitation. But he knew he wasn't a part of this conversation. He was not an equal to these men. Plus, he kind of felt like he'd been in the centre of things too much lately. It was nice to slip into the background for a change. Khadgar recognised many of the men present. There was Gen Greymane, King of Gilneas, far more clever than his appearance suggested. Then there was Grand Admiral Dalin Proudmoore, ruler of Kultiris, but also commander of the world's largest, fiercest navy. The quiet, cultured-looking man was Lord Aidan Perinold, master of Alterac, and he seemed to be glaring at Thoris Trollbane, who was king of the neighbouring Stromgard. But Trollbane was paying him no mind, because he was too busy focused on a short, stout man who needed no introduction anywhere on the entire continent. Alonzus Fowl, Archbishop of the Church of Light, revered by humans everywhere, and Khadgar could see why. The guy radiated a sense of peace and wisdom. A violet flicker then caught the corner of Khadgar's eye, so he turned, and had to stop himself from gushing like a fangirl by the bloke who passed him. Archmage Antonidas, the legend. In all his years at Dalaran, Khadgar had only ever seen the leader of the Kirin Tor twice. But to see him now, standing beside these monarchs, and looking just as regal as the rest of them, it filled Khadgar with awe, as well as a surprising wave of homesickness. He missed Dalaran, he realised. Maybe after the wars were over, assuming they survived, he'd finally get to go home. But Antonidas was the last to arrive, and so the Royal Brain Trust got started.
Thank you all for coming. I know the request seems sudden, but we have matters of grave import to discuss, and time seems to be of the essence. I present to you Anduin Lothar, champion of Stormwind. He's come here as a messenger, and more, perhaps even a saviour. I think it best for me to let him tell you what he's seen, and what we may expect to see soon ourselves.
Lothar then stepped forward. Terenas had offered him fresh clothing, but the champion of Stormwind had insisted on keeping his own tattered armour, possibly for added effect.
Your Majesties, I am no poet or diplomat, but a warrior, so I'll keep my words brief and blunt. My home, Stormwind, is no more.
Once again, gasps and murmurs, but Lothar continued.
It fell before a horde of creatures known as orcs. They're terrible foes, as tall as a man but far stronger, bestial features, green skin and red eyes.
This time, no one laughed. They were off to a good start.
This horde appeared recently and began harassing our patrols, but those were just raiding parties. When their full force marched, we were astounded. Thousands, tens of thousands, enough to cover the land in a foul shadow. They're strong and cruel and merciless. We fought them as best we could, but it wasn't enough. They besieged our city, wreaked havoc across the land itself. King Lane died at their hands.
Khadgar noted that Lothar didn't mention how the king had died. Perhaps mentioning the half-orc assassin they'd all trusted as an ally was probably not the best idea in this moment. Plus, neither Lothar or Khadgar really wanted to think about that. Even with witnessing that vision with Garona back at Medivh's tower, Khadgar still didn't exactly feel great about her betrayal.
They killed most of our nobles as well. I brought the prince, and as many people as I could to safety, and I brought this warning. The Horde is not from this world. They will not be content to control a single continent. They'll want the rest of them as well. You're saying they're coming here, lad? Yes.
Lothar's simple response sent a ripple of surprise, and perhaps fear, through the room, but Proudmoore had more questions.
Do they have ships? I'm not sure. We didn't see any before, but we hadn't even seen the Horde itself until this past year. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So they could be sailing towards us as we speak.
They could march over land as well. Don't forget that.
True. We first encountered them out east, at the Swamp of Sorrows. They made it to Stormwind from there by foot. If they turned north, they could cross the Burning Steppes and the mountains, come upon Lordaeron from the south.
The south? They shall not pass us. I'll crush any who attempt landfall on my coast.
You don't understand. You haven't faced them. I know their numbers and strength are difficult to comprehend, but you cannot stand against them. Not alone. Stormwind's armies were great. My warriors were trained and seasoned. But before the horde itself, we felt like adult children. They'll sweep across the mountains, across your lands, and across you. What do you propose we do then?
Archbishop Fowl spoke at just the right time, really. Tempers were starting to flare a little bit. Kings don't like being called fools and stuff, especially not in front of other kings.
We need to band together. Unite. Fight them as one. You say this threat is coming. I won't dispute it. And you say we must all band together to end the threat. But I wonder, have you actually tried any other method to resolve the matter? Surely these orcs can be rational. Surely they have some goal in mind. Perhaps we could parley.
Lothar shook his head and made no effort to hide how stupid he thought that idea was.
They want this world. Our world. They'll not settle for less. We did send messengers, envoys, ambassadors. Most of them came back in pieces, if they came back at all.
Khadgar could see the way the kings were standing, murmuring. Seemed like they still didn't really understand the danger they all faced. So he sighed and took a step forward. However, before he could speak, another robed wizard piped up instead.
Hear me. I have received reports before now of this new menace. The wizards in and around Stormwind were at first intrigued and then terrified by the orcs' presence, and they sent many letters requesting aid. I fear we did not listen as well as we might have. We appreciated their danger, but thought the orcs little more than a local nuisance, confined to that one kingdom. Seems now we were wrong. They are dangerous. Many I respect have confirmed this. We disregard the champion's voice at our own peril.
If they're so dangerous, why did the Wizards of Stormwind not just deal with them? Use their magic to end the threat?
Because the orcs have magic of their own. Potent magic. Most of their warlocks are weaker than our wizards, at least from what my fellows have reported. Yet they have far greater numbers and can work in unison, something my own brethren have always struggled with.
Khadgar swore he heard a hint of bitterness in the Archmage's voice, and he couldn't agree more. If there was one thing every member of the Kirin Tor valued, it was their own independence. Getting even two wizards to work together was hard enough. More than that was beyond imagining.
Our wizards did fight back, turned the tide of several battles, but the Archmage is correct. We lacked the numbers, magically and physically. Every orc spellcaster killed another rose to take its place with two more beside it.
Lothar then frowned for the millionth time recently.
Our greatest wizard, Medivh, fell to the Horde's darkness. Most of our wizards were lost as well. I don't think magic alone will turn them back.
Once again, Khadgar noted that Lothar did not mention how or why Medivh had died. Probably wouldn't have helped their case much. Antonidas did direct a sharp glance towards Khadgar at the mention of the Guardian though. Sooner or later, the Council of the Kirin Tor would demand a full explanation. They would not be satisfied with anything less than the truth. So Khadgar wasn't exactly looking forward to that conversation. I find it strange that a stranger to our shores would be so concerned with our survival. Forgive me for treading on such fresh wounds, sir, but, your own kingdom is gone. Your king dead. Your prince is little more than a boy. Your land's overrun. You've brought word of this threat to us, for which we are grateful, but you speak repeatedly of what we must do. Not entirely sure you're the best person to provide advice, really. And you say we should unite. But if we were to consider your suggestion, what could you possibly add to the assembly? I will not have my guest insulted, so Aiden. This man has brought us this news at his own personal peril. He showed nothing but honour and compassion, despite what I imagine is immense personal grief. Perinold nodded and half bowed in a sort of silent, slightly mocking apology. Further, you are wrong to label him alone or invaluable. Prince Varian Rin is now my honoured guest, and will be so until he chooses to depart. I've pledged myself to aiding him in regaining his kingdom. More murmurs from the kings and stuff, and Khadgar knew what they were thinking. Terenas had just renounced any claims he might have made to Stormwind, and warned the other kings that Varian had his full support. All in one statement. Clever move. Clever man. So Lothar has brought others with him from their kingdom, including some soldiers. Their numbers might not be significant, but their experience in dealing with the orcs firsthand is invaluable. And finally, you are wrong to label him a stranger. Though he has never graced this continent with his presence, Lothar has strong ties to this land. He is of the Arathi bloodline, the last of their noble line. He has just as much right to speak at this council as any of us. That revelation caused quite the stir among the other kings. Even Khadgar looked at his companion with new eyes. And Arathi, the first nation on the continent, the people who had formed strong ties with the elves and fought an epic battle against trolls and ended their threat forever. Bloody hell!
It's true. I descend from King Thoradin, the founder of Arathor. My family went south after the Empire's collapse, and founded a new nation there which became known as Stormwind.
So you've come to claim sovereignty over us?
No. My ancestors surrendered any claim to Lordaeron long ago when they chose to depart, but I still have ties to this land, which my people helped conquer and civilize.
And he can still call upon ancient pacts for aid. The elves swore to support Thoradin and his line in times of need. They will still honour that commitment. That drew appreciative whispers from the gathering. Suddenly, Lothar was more than just a soldier in their eyes. He was a potential ambassador. With the ancient magic-wielding elves on their side, the lingering threat of this horde didn't seem so bad.
This is a great deal to take in. Perhaps we should give ourselves time to consider all we've heard.
Agreed. Food has been set out in the dining hall. I invite you all to join me. Not as kings, but as neighbours and friends. Let us not discuss this matter over our food, but rather mull it to ourselves. Then we may be able to approach it more clearly, after digesting the food and the danger that lies before us. Khadgar observed as the monarchs nodded and started to bugger off. Perinold was a wily one, that was certain. The type of guy who probably waits to see which way a crowd is walking and then runs to the front and yells, "Follow me." And we're leaving it there! There's a little Arthur's cameo at the end of that chapter, but I'd already kind of done that myself in the last video, so whatevs. We'll be back with Doomhammer in the next chapter, and the whole book's pretty much like that. There's an alliance chapter, then there's a horde chapter, then there's an alliance chapter, and so on and so forth. Right up until the two sort of collide. As usual, links in the description for the book, my Patreon page, my Discord, all of that stuff. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!